can share this one. Good afternoon. Test. Good afternoon, everyone. Whoa, sorry, that was a little loud. My name is Verena Mösenbichler-Bryant. I'm the artistic director and conductor of the Durham Medical Orchestra, and I'm also the chair of the Department of Music here on campus. And it is my pleasure to welcome you to our pre-concert conversation. Can you hear me again? Perfect. Let me start by introducing our guest speakers today. I'll start in alphabetical order with Peter Askim. Peter is Raleigh-based. He's a composer, a conductor, and a bassist, and is known for his innovative compositions and leadership in contemporary music. He is the founder and artistic director of the Next Music Festival of Emerging Artists and has worked extensively with living composers, championing new works and young talent. Peter also teaches down the road at NC State, where he conducts the Raleigh Civic Orchestra and the Chamber Orchestra, among many others. DMO has had a long-term connection with Peter, and we are so grateful that you're here today and that we get to perform your As Glaciers Thaw. Then Stephen Bryant. He's no stranger here on stage if you have come to some of our concerts before. Stephen is Durham-based. He has written for the Minnesota Orchestra, the Detroit Symphony Orchestra, among others. And he has combined technology with music for multiple projects. And we're honored to give the premiere of The Automatic Earth today, which DMO commissioned with the help of the North Carolina Arts Council and individual members, including several organizations from here on campus. Welcome, Stephen. Then Nichola Clark. She is a senior officer at the Pew Charitable Trusts in Washington, D.C., and her focus is on ocean conservation and governance. She holds degrees in English and in environmental public policy and law from Trinity College, and a master's degree in environmental management from Duke University. While she studied here at Duke in the Nichola School, she played trumpet in our orchestra, and we're so delighted that you are back from DC to be on the panel today. Next to me is Tony Huang. Tony is a professor of medicine in the division of Pulmonary, Allergy, and Critical Care Medicine here at Duke, and he rounds frequently in the ICU. He earned his MD from the National Taiwan University College of Medicine and his Master of Health Science in Environmental Health Science from Johns Hopkins University. Tony was a founding member of the orchestra, and when we have the concert later, you will spy him in the violin section. Last but not least, I'd like to introduce my co-moderator, Sara Peach. Sara plays clarinet in DMO and has served as the chair for the DMO Climate Committee this past year. She is the editor-in-chief of the Yale Climate Connection, which she joined in 2016. She is an environmental journalist whose work has appeared in the National Geographic, Scientific America, Environmental Health News, and more. She's won numerous awards for her reporting on environmental issues. Would you please give a warm welcome to our panelists?
So we're here for a climate change and health concert, and we want to set the stage a little bit by directing the first question to you, Tony. You're a health professional. Can you talk a little bit about your top concern as a health professional about climate change?
Thanks for inviting me. So as a pulmonary physician, as you know, I'm always very concerned about the environmental changes. Climate change leads to warming, global warming, and it does increase the ozone level in the summer. It increases excessive heating. It increases the particle levels. It prolongs the allergy season. All these can cause problems in patients who have pulmonary diseases, including COPD, emphysema, asthma, even interstitial lung disease. So that's a top concern. As you know, pulmonary disease is pretty much 80% environmental induced and 20% genetic. So this is a very big topic for a pulmonary physician like me and maybe all other pulmonary physicians.
Thank you. And this is a concert not just about climate change, but about climate action. So for you, Nichola, can you talk about, as a policy expert, what are some of the most important things that individuals and communities can do about climate change?
Thank you. So I'll a couple of maybe strands of response. So one, of course, individual action is really important to do. And I think we could spend a whole lot, like, hours and hours, days and days talking about all of the different things that one could do. There's a great book called How to Save Your Planet One Object at a Time. And it goes sort of through every room in your house, right? And if it is, there's sort of, you can find what sort of change that you can make that would fit your lifestyle. So there's individual action is important. I also think sort of using action collectively to reach out to your policymakers, your decision makers, your politicians, reach out to businesses, have your voice heard through the decisions that you make and where you spend your money, how you purchase things. Something like 100 companies account for 70% of all sort of corporate emissions. So having that pressure applied to corporations and using individual voices and collective voices to do that can really have a significant impact. And similarly for sort of having that sort of pressure on politicians as well. I had my main work is going to the UN and watching treaties get negotiated. And I can tell you, right, that being in the negotiating room, you'll have those people who are responsible, right, for coming up with the provisions that can help us save our planet or give us the tools we need to do that. And they make their decisions because they've got pressure from on high, from their bosses, to come home with the treaty or don't come home. And so that's quite motivating for them. And then I think thirdly, the third point I want to leave on is just the importance of hope in all of this. You read the news on climate change and it's a lot of doom and gloom, and there is a lot of doom and gloom out there. There's some changes that are locked in already. But then there's still some that aren't. And things that we do today can help make all the difference between a habitable planet in the future for us, for other species. Every degree matters. Every 10th of a degree matters. So even if it seems like there's a lot of doom and gloom out there, it's important to keep up hope and to keep up the fight because, yeah, every degree matters.
Thank you so much. So both of our guest composers wrote pieces that relate to climate change. Why, as a composer, is it that it is important for you to bring this topic into your work? And I'll start with Peter.
Let me just say it's a pleasure to be here and be amongst this company, and I'm just so excited for what we're all about to hear. The piece that you're about to hear of mine today is called As Glaciers Thaw, and I think it's really, over the years, become clear to me that how much nature is an inspiration for my work and how much it informs my creativity and how important it is to me to communicate that we have a treasure, we have all of these beautiful environments, and it's so much a part of who we are, our health. You know, I have a young son, and I just hope that, you know, I'm just a musician, but if there's some way that I can bring attention to this, maybe the world will be a slightly better place for him. In this great company, that's my hope, is that we can do that. And just one quick anecdote. I'm a conductor, and I was doing a performance about the environment, and I partnered with a researcher on campus, and she had finger sensors, and so we had everybody hear a lecture about global change, and then we had those same people with a finger sensor on to measure their response, their emotional response. And we had those same people come to a concert, And it was so clear that the engagement is so much deeper when people have that portal opened by the arts. People were ready to hear things and ready to take them in a way they weren't. And when I told a whole group of scientists that I was a conductor, they all came up to me and wanted to. We know what the science is. We don't want to talk to the other scientists. We have to get the message out. And they were all excited about the arts as a way forward to communicate that.
Well, echoing exactly what Peter said, my piece, The Automatic Earth, the original version was written 5 years ago for wind ensemble and electronics, but this new version for symphony orchestra is premiering today. And so 5 years ago, that place of where I really was fairly dark. And so I think to the question of why do we include this in our music, why do we write music about this, I think it's as much a question of how could I not? We spend vast stretches of a time, or at least I do, alone in a room, in a bubble, wrestling with which pitch is it, which rhythm is it. But that introspective place means that the things that are most heavily on me naturally intrude and give me the why for all those things. So that's the very short version of, we have a young daughter as well, and so that only increases the urgency of the why.
Would you please share with the audience a little bit about the journey of both of the pieces so we know a little bit more details and specifics about them?
Okay. Peter says I go first. So, as I mentioned, The Automatic Earth. It is a large work. The first thing you should know about it, there's electronic sounds in addition to the human sounds. It's a vast sound world. At times, you cannot tell the difference. At times, the difference is very stark. And the second thing you should know is that it's 5 movements, but they're all connected. There are no pauses. And it's not so much a morality play where I'm shouting at you and all of us about how bad things are and we need to be more urgent. It's more an internal emotional journey, and I'm filled with a lot of emotional ambiguity, which is not a place most of us really want to spend a lot of time. Well, I'm going to make you spend 30 minutes there. Because I spent hours and hours and hours there wrestling with that. In the most overt sense, there's a lot of this back and forth between major and minor in a really, really explicit way of is this happy, is this sad? I mean, that's a really huge oversimplification, but that is a big role in there. It opens with a slow fire, that's the first movement. And these titles are from either Paul Simon or Robinson Jeffers, the poet. And I won't go into all of that. You can read more on my website. But it's a rather mostly quiet opening, laying out this chorale in this sort of space, a mental, emotional space. And then it erupts into the Days of Miracle and Wonder, which is almost manic, happy, rhythmic, bright, as you will see in the lights as well, movement. Perhaps a little too happy. I think of the meme, the dog, and the room's on fire. Everybody knows the meme. It has a bit of that aspect to it. It's happy. It's real happy. Everything's fine. That explodes, disintegrates. The third movement, Shining of Shadow, is a real place of stillness and quietness. Piano solo opens and closes it. The same chords from the first movement come back and expand. There's one sort of big moment of kind of dark clarity, and then it fades, but it's mostly very quiet. And then we come to the fourth movement, The Automatic Earth, this huge breath exhalation. When you hear that, that's where we are. And things begin to move with a relentless inevitability. You hear electronic groove enter this dark sound world, and then gains momentum. It has this inevitability to it. And it's not just the inevitability that things are going to get hotter and that we're going to get worse. It's more of we're facing this and we are going to transform what we are as human beings, I think, as well as in adaptation in order to survive and thrive. There is a very clear moment of reckoning at the end of this movement. You will not miss this. And that takes us into the fifth movement, the language of light, which is this moment of breathing again. The original chords that have come back, and now we're in waves of sound and relief. But it's somewhat alien to us. I think we've crossed over into something else. And so it's a huge question mark. Again, ambiguity is the heart of this piece. So I urge you to to sit with that and be okay with it.
So as I mentioned before, the piece of mine that you're going to hear this afternoon is As Glaciers Thaw, and kind of ironically, I was living and working and teaching in, of all places, Hawaii, when I wrote it. And to explain to the orchestra snow, ice, cold, felt like it was another language. But you know, I'm from the north, I'm from Maine, and although we don't have glaciers we see every day, the remnants of glaciers, it's shaped the whole landscape where I grew up. So what you'll hear in the music is this, it opens very, very coldly and just kind of very still. And what you hear is these interlocking lines between cello and viola, or viola and second violin. And you hear this almost crystalline structure, and it's frozen in place. And as the movement goes on, as the music comes alive, you hear motion, almost like the atoms start to move. The ice starts to decrystallize, it starts to melt, it starts to thaw. Things are coming alive, things are changing. And you find that the crystals become water, and the water becomes a rivulet, and the rivulet becomes a stream. And so it's this large-scale structure as we watch the glaciers thaw. And it gets quite active in the middle. And at the end, speaking of ambiguity, you know, at the end it kind of goes back to where it came from, but I think with a real question mark. What is the future? Is this a long night? Is this just the beginning of a very, very long day? So it's really a pleasure to hear this orchestra play it, and it's a piece that has a long history for me, and it means a lot, and I hope you enjoy it very much.
How do you both hope that the listeners, when they're hearing your works today, will respond?
I hope you come away with a sense of introspection and urgency.
And likewise, and I guess I would just add a sense of wonder at the largeness of, and the beauty and the majesty of what we're entrusted with, and how it's something that's bigger than all of us, but so important to all of us. So I hope touched kind of in wonder and inspired maybe to look a little bit differently, to act a little bit differently.
Sara actually plays a really big clarinet solo in The Automatic Earth. And I'm curious, can you talk a little bit about how working on this piece, what this has meant for you, and playing this part, how does that tie to your work?
Sure. So it's such an honor, Stephen, to play this part. I feel that I was born to play it. Looking back over my career working on climate change, when I first started it, it was a very lonely thing to do, and there's some of that loneliness echoed in the solo. It's an incredibly isolated melody. It makes me think of a blue planet suspended in a vast, dark universe. But as the music continues, more and more voices join, and that's what I've seen in my career too. There's been a huge shift in public opinion over the past 5 years about climate change. More and more people coming awake to how serious the problem is. So now more than half of the US public is worried about this problem. And there's a moment in the piece where all of the voices of the orchestra come together in a kind of scream that for me is really cathartic, thinking about all of the missed opportunities, but also the importance of speaking in that voice together. So, Nichola and Tony, I want to hear from you a little bit, echoing the question we asked earlier. What do you hope can come out of an event like this in your work?
Let me go first before I forget. So honestly, in the last few months, I have been advertising this concert to my patients. I encourage them to come, of course, if they can breathe, okay, including patients who are on oxygen. I know that there is a former concert pianist who would like to come, but he's on oxygen, and I don't know whether he'll be here or not. In my practice, I spend a lot of time talking to the patient about environments. And you know, when you cannot breathe, that's a big topic. I don't think they hear me. But if you use the real example, like last year, there was a wildfire in Canada, and the smoke came all the way down to North Carolina. And during that week of June, there were increased number of phone calls and messages to me that they have breathing problem. And I think that's a real example I can use to educate them, and I think the concert is a good venue too to talk to them about. Helene recently in Western Carolina, a lot of patients cancel their clinic visits, and we cannot do telemedicine because it's not reimbursed anymore after COVID. So I have to call them, to find out what's going on. So I think this concert helps so that this is a good opportunity for me to at least use this opportunity to tell them that, hey, there are a lot more people care about the climate change, and so do you.
Thank you. And actually what your comments I resonated very much with it feeling quite a lonely space to work in sort of environmental policy spaces. I'm often trapped in the basement of a windowless UN room, and you've been there for 2 weeks, and you're now there. It's going on 18-hour days of negotiations, and you're fighting over commas and semicolons, and should it be shall or should, may or must, and all of these ridiculous. And there's a feeling of sort of like, is all of this worth it? Do people even care? Does it make a difference? And I honestly think this concert here today, the fact that there are composers and musicians out there who care so much about this that they're writing pieces about it to help raise awareness, because that's the thing that we as policymakers, we can't do that. We actually need the public to care. We need people to care. And so I think people caring is such an impactful thing. I'm getting lots of sort of like inspiration and breath and I guess hope sort of restored from just this individual experience, right? And I think I plan to share it within my community. Hey, did you know that you can go and like there are pieces of music that have been composed that are about this problem. There are concerts that are put on there are roomfuls of people who will come early to hear a talk about it because they are so concerned. I think realizing that we're all in this together is such an important component of us making it through.
So Sara, if our audience today is inspired, what forms of action can they do? What is most important?
I'm so glad you asked. So I would think about a couple of things. One is we're often in this culture pushed toward consumer actions. And there are a few consumer actions that are really, really important. So at your house and your car, a lot of those appliances and likely your car use fossil fuels. So the next time your gas-burning stove breaks or your car breaks down, my recommendation is to go ahead and replace it with an electric alternative, because those alternatives are getting really, really good. So if you own your home and you're able to replace those appliances and your air conditioning and heating systems with fossil fuels and your car with an electric car, you're basically zeroing out a huge amount of your carbon footprint. So those are the big consumer actions that are really important. But more than that, I really encourage you to be a joiner. We have a whole bunch of community groups that are tabling in the lobby. I think they're going to have a ton of advice for you about what you can do, and one of those things that you can do is join them, support them, because this is a big problem. It's one that we need to work on together. It's not something that you can solve by yourself, and it's frankly really lonely and disempowering to try to solve it by yourself. It's much more fun and joyful to work with other people, as we've just seen, rehearsing, getting ready for this concert. You want to be a player in the orchestra that's working on climate change.
So you might be wondering why you have a sticky note on your program if you're supposed to take notes today. No, we are asking everyone to take a pledge today for action. And in the lobby, there are tables with some artwork, and we're asking that everyone places their sticky note with their pledge onto the artwork. Before we leave the stage to get ready for the concert, I want to ask our panelists, what are your next steps? What are your pledges?
Mine. Well, I said my next car is an electric car.
Mine's wonky. There's a new treaty out there, and we created for ourselves this possibly flexible provision called emergency measures, which allows, theoretically, action to be taken quite swiftly to respond to emergency situations. There's a lot of ambiguity as to if and how it could be used to respond to climate change, because it's quite focused on ocean work. But I think it could be a really cool provision to potentially help tackle some climate change problems and to respond quite quickly. So mine is to do some more looking into that, to do some research in how that provision might be able to be leveraged to help with climate change.
I like how you have your fingers directly in massive policy. That feels, I know you've spent time in the basement alone with the commas, but that's incredibly empowering. Our pledge is to try to finish converting our entire house and everything to electricity and get solar panels on our roof. We've tried twice. Our HOA has shot it down both times. But there's a new board as of next month, so I'm going to try again. What I've seen, though, is in doing proposals 4 years apart, is the amount of solar panels is shrinking rapidly that we need to reach 100% of usage. So the technology is, there was a direct one-to-one. The cost is going down, and it's amazing. We do have an electric car. I just wanted to say on the side of that, those are expensive, and if you can't afford one, a more efficient gas car is actually also a huge change. Just as efficient as you can afford. Don't let the perfect be the enemy of the good. Just because you can't afford it, that doesn't mean you can't do anything. But we're going to try to replace our water heater with something electric and try to produce all of our own electricity. Wish us luck.
Yeah, I think along those lines, we just replaced our HVAC, and hopefully it's better, and our water heater, hopefully it's better. And also, to what Stephen was saying, to what we can afford. So my wife has a real job, so she got an electric car, and I'm a musician, so I got a hybrid, and we're doing what we can, but also trying to share that message with our son. I think that's more impactful than any consumer decision I personally could make. So we're hoping he's going to get that message.
To echo these two, I'm so close to having a fully electric house running on solar panels. The last step is to replace our hot water heater with an electric version of it. So I'm really excited about that. But I think another thing that folks could think about is just getting to know your neighbors. Because think about Hurricane Helene and how devastating that was. It's your neighbors who are going to be there for you if something like that happens in the Triangle. And also, it's really fun just to get to know the people in your community.
I want to thank the panelists for this conversation. We are looking forward to getting ready now to start the performance at 2 p.m. Thank you so much for being here. And I'd encourage you to take the few moments that you still have to go out in the lobby and explore the tables that are out there. Thank you so much.